So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening. We're just going to let a few more people here join the webinar tonight. Thanks everyone again for taking the time out of this evening for joining us. And I'll hand it off to the president of the UCPBA Calgary branch, Darren Lemke.
Thanks, Cassian. Welcome everybody for coming tonight's event. Just want to get into this, and Cassian has been really helpful on this. At UCPBA Calgary, of course, with the lockdown for the last year and everything being abnormal, not being able to have in-person meetings and get together to share ideas and presentations, we embarked on a different series of Zoom type of webinar meetings. And when I started to talk this one with Petro Petrenko from the embassy in Ottawa, and then I started talking to Cassian as to, let's take these things maybe across country with the UCPBF becoming a player, more of an entity out now, and trying to build on the brand of UCPBF. And we at UCPBA in Calgary would really, going forward, or would like to share any of our webinars that we engage in with right across the country to get more engagement for all the UCPBA chapters across Canada. So I want to again thank Cassian for all his help on this at UCPBF Ottawa, and as being president of UCPBF. So Cassian, I'm going to hand it back to you, and I look forward to tonight's discussion.
Thanks very much, Darren. So as Darren mentioned, UCPBF, for those of you who don't know, is the Ukrainian Canadian Business and Professionals Federation. So it represents all of the local chapters of Ukrainian Canadian business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals, and others who want to get involved or are interested in those spheres across Canada. There are currently 5 chapters in Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Toronto, and Ottawa. We hope to keep on seeing those numbers grow and have other chapters expand as well. One of our speakers tonight is from PEI, and hopefully we'll maybe even have a chapter out there one day as well. So my name is Kasan Sultakevich, as Darren mentioned, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. Some housekeeping items. The webinar this evening is being recorded. So if you missed something, or if you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with someone, we'll post it online and share links on social media accounts for UCPBF and our local chapters as well. The other part is there will be a Q&A session at the end of tonight's presentation. So you can submit a question at any point that you'd like during the event. You can submit that into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to your questions at the end. But feel free again to submit questions at any time. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker to bring some greetings, who's well known across Canada, our ambassador from Ukraine to Canada, His Excellency Andriy Shevchenko. Ambassador Shevchenko.
Дякую, and thank you, Kassiane. Well, I'll just say that, of course, it's a great pleasure to address this very distinctive audience, and Calgary should know that Alberta has a very special place in my heart and in our hearts. And to kick off this conversation, I'll just say 3 things. First, we do live in an interesting time of new opportunities, and many of those new opportunities arise between Canada and Ukraine. I can give you just 2 examples. First, Ukraine has recently bypassed Japan to become the number 3 buyer of Canadian fish and seafood. And on the other hand, 25% of apple juice in Canada today comes from Ukraine. And maybe 5 or 7 years ago, those things would be rather exotic news, but now it's just statistics, and it's something that we should bear in mind. Second, our big goal here is to make sure that we create friendly business environment for those Ukrainian and Canadian businesses that want to work together. Of course, Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, which we're going to talk about today, is a big piece, but it's not all. We still have other things in the pipeline, the customs agreement and expansion of the free trade agreement into services and investments. There is homework on both sides of the ocean, which has to be done. One thing that we can do together is to convince the Canadian government that it's time to unlock resources of Export Development Canada and support those Canadian businesses that are interested in working in Ukraine. And finally, I want to encourage the UCPBA Calgary and everyone in the audience to work closer with the new Ukrainian Consulate General in Edmonton. Our consul, Alexander Danileiko, is among the participants tonight. And I understand that after the last night NHL game, he decided not to be among those first speakers at the Calgary event. But we do expect Alexander to join in the discussion after the presentation. Alexander has spent an impressive part of his career covering trade and investment. And that was one of the reasons why Ukraine sent him to Alberta, and I encourage all of us to use his energy, his connections, and his resourcefulness. Well, I'm looking forward to a good conversation, and good luck to all of us tonight.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Shevchenko. Thanks for being with us this evening, and thank you for your introductory words. I wholeheartedly agree. You know, CUFTA was signed several years ago, but there's been many changes since then. And it's great to know that, you know, those numbers, like the ambassador mentioned, that used to be kind of, you know, one-offs or not very common, are now just statistics. And we hope those statistics keep on growing and become more and more popular. So with that, you know, speaking directly on CUFTA, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, we'll have the next speaker, who is the Trade Commissioner and Counselor at the Embassy of Ukraine in Canada, Petro Petrenko, who will give an update on CUFTA.
Good evening, everyone. I will try to share my screen with you and my, I hope, nice presentation. So if all of us can see.
Yeah, we can see it great.
Okay, let's move on then. Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this virtual event where we discuss Canada-Ukraine trade and specifically the trade agreement we have in place. Again, my name is Petro Petrenko. I'm Trade Commissioner in the Embassy of Ukraine in Canada. It's quite an evening in, at least in Ottawa, and probably a good time for less stressful and more entertaining speeches. Well, unfortunately, I cannot guarantee that my presentation will be fun, but I will try to do my best to make it at least interesting. Please feel free to ask questions, as Kasyan said, and I will, again, if I don't have enough time to answer it right now online, I will also do it by email afterwards. During the next 15 or so minutes, I will dig deeper into what is CUFTA, what we have achieved so far, what are the difficulties, and as well as what to expect next for Canadian or Ukrainian businesses. So let's start with what is CUFTA actually. Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, or simply CUFTA, is a bilateral free trade agreement between Ukraine and Canada that came into effect on August 1st, 2017. It was Canada's 13th and Ukraine's 16th free trade agreement. 800 pages document has a very clear aim to improve market access for Canadian and Ukrainian businesses, help them grow, and create new opportunities. CUFTA includes 19 chapters and covers a wide range of bilateral trade matters. I will briefly point to the most significant of them. Let's start with the technical barriers. This chapter regulates the non-tariff technical barriers to trade. The differences in Canadian and Ukrainian standards on products quality and safety requirements, labeling and certification may become a source of unjustified restraints for free trade. This chapter regulates those differences. The next one is about the rules of origins. As you may know, the duties that are eliminated by CUFTA relate exclusively to the goods originating from Ukraine or Canada. And this chapter includes rules to determine a country of origin. Then next one is trade facilitation procedures. Agreement provides for shared access of the parties to all necessary regulations in the sphere of trade. CUFTA encourages automatization of customs duties, procedures, and use of IT technologies, as well as creating the complaints system regarding the customs services. We also have emergency action and trade remedies, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and government procurement, of course. I will stop here for a while. The agreement provides that both countries, that companies from both countries have an opportunity to bid in the course of government procurement. Businesses have the right to fair and non-discriminated access to government procurement conducted by both countries' governments, including procurement done by state enterprises. Canadian market of government procurement is well over $130 billion. And in Ukraine, public procurement is also large, and it accounts for about 13% of GDP. It's huge, both cases, and we think it's very promising as well. We also have electronic commerce and some other things. And when we speak about CUFTA, we normally show this picture just to understand how great the work was between two countries to make it work. As I mentioned, CUFTA eliminated almost all tariffs and provided non-tariff measures. To be more precise, upon CUFTA entry into force, 86% of Ukraine imports from Canada became duty-free, with the remaining tariff advantages to be implemented by January 1st, 2024. Meanwhile, Canada immediately eliminated tariffs of 98% of imports from Ukraine. We find this argument among the strongest one when advocating to use CUFTA. And we advise both Canadian and Ukrainian businesses to use Canada Tariff Finder tool to check online tariff information for the specific products you want to export or import. This instrument could give tariff with codes or simply by a product name. Back to CUFTA. The largest Canadian tariff cuts under CUFTA included footwear, animal or vegetable fats and oils, textiles and apparel, raw skins, leather and wood and wood products, and plastics. Exceptions comprised of gradual tariff elimination for certain vehicles, global tariff rate quotas for some agricultural products. About 1% of Ukraine tariff lines for some agricultural products from Canada will remain dutiable. It's live animals, animal products, vegetables, etc. The largest Ukraine tariff reductions upon CUFTA took place for preparations of vegetables, fruits, nuts, preparations of cereals and flour, beverages, apparel and textiles, cereals, and soap and cosmetics, as you can see. CUFTA envisages the possible extension of its provisions to cross-border trade in services, telecommunications, business entry, investments, and financial services. But we will talk about it later. Now let's move on to what we have achieved with CUFTA. I will go through, let's call it, the major gains. I must mention that because of different approaches to statistics in Canada and Ukraine, we do not see a full picture for 2020 yet, but could presume that our trade obviously did not benefit a lot from the pandemic. But anyway, preliminary estimates by the Kiev School of Economics show that after signing CUFTA, Ukraine's exports of goods to Canada have been steadily growing and expanding much faster compared to other trade partners, up by 70% in 2017, 55% in 18, and close to 10% in 2019, as reported by Ukraine. And you can see this famous apple juice, which Ambassador mentioned in his opening remarks, which is quite famous now in Ukraine, in Canada, sorry. At the same time, Canada non-coal exports to Ukraine has been growing from $90 million in 2016 to $115 million in 2019, or by 28%, as reported by Canada. The slowdown of Canada-Ukraine bilateral non-coal trade growth in 2019 was in line with the declining growth trend in total Ukraine's trade as a result of the national currency appreciation and declining world prices on major Ukraine exported products. After CUFTA entered into force, the following product groups of Canada exports to Ukraine expanded the most. It's fish, machinery, vehicles, meat, electrical equipment. On the Ukrainian side, exports to Canada was the best for iron and steel, copper, preparation of vegetables, machinery, and vehicles. These are numbers and it's very dry dry information, or if I can say so. But another not less important effect that CUFTA has on both our countries is significant attention to trade and investments. We have a good instrument. We have CUFTA, which is a good instrument to boost our trade, and we have to use it. The solid proof that we are moving in the right direction is the decision of both countries to modernize the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement and extend it to services and investments, among other things. And with almost every case, when you have increased attention and more intense cooperation, you will face certain difficulties, which is actually the next step of my presentation. What are the difficulties? I will start by pointing out that the agreement itself foresees the instrument to address problems in its administration. Bilateral working groups meet when necessary to discuss what could be improved based on suggestions from businesses. CUFTA foresees also the mechanisms to call for a meeting of coordinators to discuss matters that could influence the execution of the agreement. Both countries have the right to call for an extraordinary meeting of coordinators that has to take place within 30 days. In Ukraine, the main coordinator is the Ministry of Economy of Ukraine, and we advise Ukrainian businesses to address this specific ministry when they want to report a problem. In Canada, I presume it will be Global Affairs Canada. What we hear from Ukrainian businesses as potential difficulties when entering the Canadian markets are non-tariff barriers in general terms. For Canadian businesses and Ukrainian importers, we have heard about customs procedures. And the biggest difficulty we faced recently was, of course, the pandemic. But to be honest, Ukraine and Canada went really well when protecting domestic producers at the same time fulfilling obligations concerning international trade. Ukraine had a short-term ban on the export of certain grains. I mean, hrechka, if you know what I mean. Not every Ukrainian could live long without having a good stock of hrechka or buckwheat. But this is a joke, of course. Not that Ukraine banned hrechka export. No, the joke is that Ukrainians could not live without it. But so the ban is lifted, everything is okay. Ukraine now exports hrechka worldwide, and we are safe in Canada as well. And Canada, as we know, did not impose export limitations, advocating for the open international trade as loud as it is possible. One specific limiting factor I want to mention is the rating of EDC, as Ambassador also mentioned, which is now open on a restricted basis. The change from the previous higher rank was made after the beginning of a war with Russia in the east of Ukraine, followed by negative trends in Ukrainian economy. Since that time, we unfortunately still have to fight the war against Russia, but many things in economy have changed. A few days ago, Standard & Poor's global rating reaffirmed Ukraine to be with stable outlook when it comes to long-term and short-term liabilities in foreign and national currencies. And we hope that insurance instruments of EDC will become cheaper and more accessible for Canadian businesses for the benefit of both of our countries. So what to expect next? Well, you may have already heard that both countries decided to modernize the agreement. Procedures in both countries are different, and because of coronavirus, some bureaucratic procedures are slower than usual. In last year, the government of Canada conducted public consultations about possible modernization, which went well, and majority of submissions conveyed support to possible modernization. As the government of Canada says, in general, Canadians see value in modernizing CUFTA as a means of further strengthening Canada and Ukraine's bilateral commercial relations and people-to-people ties, and to build on Canada's current engagement with Ukraine. The modernization is followed by monotonous work of experts that held several technical consultations in 2019 and 2012 and 20, and we expect that official negotiations to modernize CUFTA will be launched very soon. We hope that upgrading Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement and adding new chapters, in particular related to services and investments, will definitely have a positive impulse for our trade, and we give another tool to protect investments. Dear colleague, to conclude, I want to do two things. First, I briefly present to you a new thing, and secondly, a well-known person, but from a little bit different perspective. So the new thing is Ukraine UA. It's official digital portal about Ukraine. It was launched just recently and will have updates about the country, its sightseeing attractions and history, as well as investments, trade, and innovation programs. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, says that this site should become a magnet for ordinary tourists, businessmen, and students. And right now, the site is in English. We expect it to be in French, German, and other languages as well. This website has a Ukraine photo bank, and many photographers actually responded to call of my ministry and included their pictures free of charge to the portal. I encourage you all to use it if you look for some good pictures or some news about Ukraine. And the next thing is, well, it's Sviatoslava Karchuk. For those who you don't know, it's a well-known singer and a former, or I don't know, politician in Ukraine. His Okean Elzy is one of the most famous bands for many, many years. And some of you may remember several tours of Okean Elzy in 2014 and 17. Anyway, a few days ago, Ukrainian media New Time had lunch with Sviatoslav and talked about his music and political career. The interview ended with 5 short questions. One of them was, what was the most amazing travel experience in your life? And Sviatoslav answered that, I will tell you about the trip that changed my life. When I was 15, for the first time in my life, as an exchange student, I went to Canada. Nothing has ever blown my mind more than that trip. It very much influenced what I became. To follow the thought, I wish our Canadian friends to continue to impress Ukrainians, as well as Ukrainians to impress in a positive way Canada. Thank you for your attention and patience, and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Petro. Excellent presentation. I think there's been, a couple of trends that we've seen, and I've heard echoed from other colleagues. I know the continued issues with Export Development Corporation with EDC continues to be a sensitive topic, but needs to be continued to be worked on to help Canadian businesses working in Ukraine. Also, I know there was a question about the recording. This webinar is being recorded, will be posted on UCPBF on our YouTube channel. You can also check out UCPBF on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and we'll post it there as well, and that's available. A little bit of a transition to our next speaker, which I think with CUFTA and something that has been the trend with not only with the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, but with with countries across the globe, is especially Canada, US, Western Europe. We're transitioning a lot into a more so-called creative time space in our development. We had manufacturing and assembly lines 100 years ago, and it's really transitioned now into we're in a much more creative space. So despite the fact that Canada has a lot more creatives or a lot more so-called white collar work, there still is opportunity for that kind of blue collar or manufacturing and more traditional industries to work together, both in Canada and Ukraine. But even that creative space is very popular in Ukraine with agencies like Banda, which is a huge name in Ukraine and very popular and has won lots of awards. But we're going to go with someone who's originally from Ukraine but has moved to Canada and is now living in the beautiful island of Prince Edward Island in Charlottetown. So Elena is the CEO and creative director of Art Fresh Inc. It's a multi-award winning full service marketing agency, like I mentioned, based in Charlottetown, PEI. And Elena has worked with a wide variety of companies, both Canada, US, and across Europe. And she has a fascinating presentation that will be very interesting. And please, a reminder to send in your questions to the Q&A, which we'll address after Elena's presentation. So Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kasyan. Thank you for this great opportunity to join you all. I want to thank you first, Ukrainian Embassy in Canada, and personally Petro Petrenko. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you. It's my pleasure. And I want to talk a little bit about marketing, how important is marketing when you enter the Ukrainian market, and if you want to grow your business there. Little bit short, couple words about my expertise, my experience, because I was like an employee in Ukraine. I worked for 12 years in leading advertising agencies as an art director, and provided branding and marketing services for international corporations such as Kimberly-Clark worldwide, Samsung, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, along with local Ukrainian companies. In 2009, I came to Canada from Kiev, Ukraine, and this versatile experience that I received during the time, along with my entrepreneurial passion, helped me start my own business in Canada, Art Fresh Creative Studio, which has grown to be a multi-award winning full service marketing agency. Working with Ukrainian and Canadian companies for years helped me better understand the specifics of growing business and open new opportunities for collaboration with foreign businesses and investors. In Canada, we see a lot of very well established and well-known corporations and enterprises with a long, successful history. And if you talk about Ukrainian market, it's very young and is dynamically growing, which open really great opportunities for collaboration with foreign businesses and investors. So understanding this difference in the market development phase of the two markets will help you create the right business and marketing strategies to enter the Ukrainian market successfully. If you are going to bring your products or services to the Ukrainian market or find business partners, you will need to create a crystal clear understanding of your audience and competition. As competition in the Ukrainian marketplace is high, and as it's a fast-growing marketplace, you have to develop a strong, unique value proposition that will resonate with the needs and say pains of people that you want to target with your offer. Without a competitive business offer, it will be hard to create the right marketing communication and grow your business in the new environment. One of the specific of the Ukrainian consumer is that Ukrainians pay more attention and appreciate the aesthetical side of business marketing. For Canadian companies that has an interest to enter the Ukrainian market, it would be good to do a strict revision and audit of the visual presentation and marketing collateral. You know, maybe European design and marketing communication has its own uniqueness and it's different than in North America. It is important to keep in mind when you prepare your marketing materials or create a new brand for the Ukrainian market. A professional and well-designed visual presentation of your business or product, which includes branding and marketing materials, is one of the key success points for building a strong connection with the target groups and developing trust, what is very important when companies enter to the new market. For companies that are going to the Ukrainian market, I strongly recommend reviewing your business website and do rebranding if it's necessary in order to create a modern and professional business presentation online The website is your 24/7 salesperson. I know that many Canadian companies primarily focus on the functionality of the website and sometimes undervalue the importance of a great visual presentation that communicates a lot about the business and its values. So it will be a mistake if you don't pay attention to your website design when you are doing business in Ukraine. The image of the company, which is reflected in brand identity design, and the company's website creates the first impression and conveys the key message that can complement or harm your business. You should understand that the time to refresh your business strategy and undertake rebranding is before entering the new market. If you want to do this properly, the best decision will be to hire a professional company that has many years of experience working in the Ukrainian market, as this will help you save money and in the long term. Your company branding, website, and marketing collateral are critically important element in your business strategy if you want to grow business in the Ukrainian market. I want to show you like an example of a Ukrainian client with whom we worked about 4 years ago. This is a business case when one of the top agriculture companies decided to rebrand after changing its business strategy with objective to enter international markets. So I will share my screen to show you some pictures. And you will see how this company changed the direction of the presentation. Can you see my screen? I think it's all fine.
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you, Kasyan. So we did rebranding for IMC. It's one of the top 10 agriculture companies in Ukraine. The company's main activities include grain, oilseed crop cultivation, potato production, dairy farming. And in May 2011, the company conducted an IPO on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. The business has exhibited dynamic growth and rapid expansion into new international markets. So in 2017, IMC marks its 10th anniversary. To celebrate this and to implement the new business strategy to become the leading agricultural company in the world for investors, employees, clients, and the community, they decided to do rebranding. Besides like those ideas to change the strategy for marketing, they wanted to change the name of the company abbreviation. So the abbreviation still became the same, but the meaning was changed completely. So the abbreviation said now innovations, management, and commitment, IMC. So the idea was to reflect new strategy, and it should be incorporated in every element of this company rebranding. On this picture, you can see the logo design what they had before, and it's on the left, and the logo what we created for them after branding. Like you can see how it changes company message, how like dynamically was really changed communication of the values of the business strategy of this company. And the interesting task and maybe most challenging part of this project was that we need to implement two different ideas, to different concepts. First, it's create innovative strategy, modern graphic design, branding, and still need to keep respect to the tradition of Ukrainian farming that has really strong roots. So we dig deep into the ancient Slavic science to find out background and see how we can give a new life to this symbolical language. And Finally, we came to this solution that we use Slavic sign, what means fertile land. It's rhombus with a dot in the center. That came with multi-meanings symbols for this logo design. First, it's sign of a target. Another, this is replication of their precise farming, what is one of the advanced methods in this industry right now. And also we had two arrows. The red shows to the innovation future, you look in the future, and the dark blue is came and look to the back. So we keep traditions, but we move further. So this active combination in one logo design using the Ukrainian color scheme, is like reminiscent of the traditional black and red in the dark blue and red, created a new dynamic combination for the new style. We edited bright yellow-green color, which reflects farming industry plus growing, and it's really complements the key classic say business color combination would help create fresh and dynamic style for this company. One of the portion of this project work was creating the brand book. This is very important to have for every business to avoid additional expenses or mistakes when you see a clear guideline how you can use all the elements of the corporate style, how you can implement all this in your marketing materials, web presentation, outdoor advertising, etc. You can see how looks the style in the corporate uniform and souvenirs. This is how guys already use these jackets when it came to the all teams would work in this company across Ukraine. This is invitation for the celebration. You can see for 10 years anniversary. Also, you can see how it's implemented in the head letter envelope, all these materials what really people use every day, brochure design, to keep consistently the marketing message what we developed with new visual and graphical language. This is how this style was implemented for the heavy machinery, for farming equipment, for the cars, for the main office. And other souvenirs what company usually give like a gift. What we talked before about importance of the web design. This is a new website for the company what we created design. And you can see that all style marketing messages, the colors consistently implement the new business strategy. As this company is fast growing and they looking to attract new young generation, new members, and to reach their ambitious goals. And this company very actively participate in different, like in Kiev, you see marathon was a couple years ago. So the team of this company show the energy, they really implement this new business strategy, even in own team, how they communicate in the company's culture, and really create inspiring events. And you can see how they create pictures. So this is really a transformation was not only about the business strategy, marketing strategy. It's transforms the company's culture and company's mission and philosophy. So this is, you can see how a brand can help implement all these ideas and strategies consistently. So this is all what I wanted to say. If you have any questions regarding marketing, regarding like specific maybe Ukrainian market, please ask me. I will be happy to respond. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks very much, Elena. An excellent presentation. I think on that we'll move a little bit more into the Q&A. But before we get there, I think it was really important how you touch upon the design and the feel of a brand. Ukrainians are different as much as even as a proud Ukrainian Canadian. and we think we know Ukraine and people of Ukraine. It's still very, very different. It's very much a European country, different mindsets, different feelings and ideas. I have a few Ukrainian colleagues, and when I work with them, and I remember talking with them about restaurants and talking about restaurants in Canada, and them saying, things like Boston Pizza or restaurants like that are very kind of similar. There's nothing that unique about them. Because I know when you go to, I know a lot of our viewers, and we know, restaurants in Lviv that are very popular, but even in Kiev and in other, smaller cities, or Odessa or Ivano-Frankivsk, there's restaurants have to have a purpose and have to have something more unique to them. They can't just be a restaurant to be a restaurant if they want to thrive. They have to be something unique. And I've never been to as many interesting restaurants as I have been in Ukraine. And I think COVID, during the times of COVID, it's for some companies, it might be a little bit of a slower time. This is a great time to think about rebranding. Art Fresh and PEI is a place to go, especially if you're entering the European market and considering about, how is your brand going to be looked upon or felt when you're in a different market than what you're used to. Also, a great example of actually from the government of Ukraine, the great branding is, I know the Ukraine UA, as Petro mentioned, but some great social media management is from the @Ukraine Twitter account. There's been phenomenal tweets by whoever the team that runs that, should also win several awards for their very blatant sometimes tweets, but are very, very topical. So with that, I think we'll go into some questions. I know that some of them are, some of our speakers have already been writing on them or responding to them. But kind of on the topic of the design or the rebranding or entering a new market, I know Petro, you just responded to it, but the first step about what Ukrainian companies wanting to enter the Canadian market, what should be the first thing they're doing? And I know you shared a helpful link there, but maybe for you, Petro, and yourself, Elena, what's kind of the first things that Ukrainian companies think about entering Canadian market? What should they think about?
If I may start, we would normally encourage a long-term export relations with Canada, which would definitely need an export strategy for the certain company to enter any market, also the Canadian market. And we have a good expertise in Ukraine to help the company to make this export strategy for the company. The export strategy itself will include several steps to do, and for the simplest one would be to at least have someone English speaking in your team. You should have your website. I know it's very basic steps, but still, you should have your website in English, and you should evaluate your strengths and weaknesses, and be sure that you actually you're able to go abroad and devote a lot of resources for the export promotion. But this all will be included in export strategy. Would take some time to develop. If it's a one-time export, it's not much to think. It's like selling to anyone else. You just go, you find your client, or importer in Canadian case, and you say, this is my product, please sell it somewhere in Canada, and that's it. Not too difficult.
So Elena, I know you work a lot with, the branding to Ukraine, but do you have any comments on the opposite?
Yes, and I had experience actually myself when I came to Ukraine, and like Ukrainian company, but I set up business in Canada, and I had the same problem how to enter the Canadian market with my expertise, with knowledge what I had. First, it's very important to spend enough time, like I said, Petro, to make research, understand the market environment, because if we say about Prince Edward Island market, or we say about Ontario market, or maybe British Columbia, it's totally different, completely environment for businesses. That's why very important to understand where you will bring your product or your company, who is your competitor, what value you can add to this market. market. Because if you don't understand your clients and competition, it's really risky to develop any brand or marketing message. So very important, create clear understanding to whom you will sell and who is your competition. That create your value proposition, your unique selling proposition. This is important part because really totally different mentality, totally different maybe perception of their understanding product uniqueness. Need to really spend enough time understand how you can position your product in this highly competitive market.
Great, thanks, Elena. So another question is, mentioning about CUFTA modernization. So, Ghana, what's planned for CUFTA modernization? I know Ambassador Shevchenko mentioned the expansion into services and investments and some other potentially minor improvements. But Patel, can you maybe elaborate on, that modernization and what else needs to be modernized, or what do you think is missing from the agreement now, and what you're hearing that should be added?
Thank you. Well, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, it has a review clause. It's Article 19.2. And this article, it commits the parties to review the agreement within 2 years of its entry into force, with the view to examining the further development and deepening of its provisions and to extending to its subject matters not covered by the agreement. In a normal words, it means that after 2 years, both parties sat on the table and decided, so what do we have missing? And they decided that services and investments are not included in the current agreement, and these two specific areas could be included into CUFTA. On the longer term, I think because of different approaches or new approaches in free trade agreements, I think other minor spheres will be added as well. But the major two big chapters that we expect to be added to CUFTA are services and investments.
Great, thank you. So another,
Kasyan, if I can add just 2 words about the review that we are doing on our side. We should also maybe it's worth mentioning that Ukraine also has DCFTA with the European Union, and Canada is advancing its CETA with the European Union. So that's actually, we're talking about creating not just friendly space between Canada and Ukraine, but as it was presented by Prime Minister Trudeau, we are creating this friendly for business space, starting from Vancouver and Victoria in the west, all the way to Kharkiv in the east of Ukraine. So I'm just saying that we should see CUFTA as just fitting into a much wider picture of this major free trade area that we have created together. So that might explain the reasons for some modernization which we might see. But overall, it's about services and investments, as it was just explained by Petro. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Ambassador. I know someone had mentioned, and Petro, you mentioned just very briefly, can you expand a little bit about grocery and liquor from Ukraine? Can you just touch upon that briefly?
Every time it's quite difficult to speak about a specific product without knowing its code. So let's say with the liquor from Ukraine, we know about the monopoly in certain provinces on selling liquor. So for certain liquors, the tariffs are not zero for when you talk about Ukraine. So every time when we have a specific grocery or a liquor product, I would recommend to go to Tariff Finder and see if that has a zero tariff or not. But 98% of all goods from Ukraine which are exported to Canada have a zero tariff on them. But still, every time to make sure that if you're a Ukrainian entrepreneur and you want to export your product to Canada, you should first of all look and see if there are any tariffs, and that would be probably a good thing to do.
Absolutely. So maybe another question here of also about kind of exporting is why does Canada exclude coal from that export data? And does Canada really export, a lot of coal to Ukraine?
Maybe I wasn't clear enough saying that it excluded. It's not excluded from export statistics. I think that contracts expired and Canada is not selling coal to Ukraine anymore. So it's not excluded that they don't want to sell it. It's just that contracts are off and that's it. And for some time, yes, there were some contracts which in statistics or in our statistics databases were showing that Canada is selling coal to Ukraine.
All right, thank you. And I know this will probably be another question for you, Petro, and then Elena, I'll have a question for you. Petro, can you elaborate a little bit more on the EDC issues and kind of maybe some examples of where so revealing companies, but kind of some of the struggles that Canadian companies have had with EDC and you in regards to Ukraine?
As many of you may know, EDC has a rating of countries, and depending on the rating, I'm trying to explain it in very general terms. Depending on the rating, the financial products of company are more or less available. Let's put it this way. After the war, as I said, after the beginning of the war and the worsening of situation in Ukrainian economy, the EDC rating of Ukraine was lowered, which means that insurance products are more expensive right now. And in every time when we speak about the rating, it's a two-way traffic. You have a governmental part like us in the embassy who is explaining what is happening in Ukrainian economy and what are the ratings and so on and so forth. But there is also a business part, and if there is a, let's say, if there is a need from a Canadian business for EDC products, then EDC is approached and it sees that well, the rating should be changed, and that's how I put it right now. So we need more Canadian businesses saying that yes, we want to deal with Ukraine and let's move on.
Again, Kasyan, can I jump in for a second? I just wanted to put this into a wider context. Canada wasn't the only country which actually became very concerned about making business in Ukraine after 2014. The Americans and many European nations did the same, but all the others have changed their minds since then. And the Americans have unlocked major financial resources to support their businesses which are interested in making in working in Ukraine. The same was done by the Europeans. So now, actually, when we talk about this with our counterparts in NATO, we are trying to explain that actually this hurts Canadian businesses because that does not allow them to use all the financial resources available here in Canada to support their interest in working in Eastern Europe. So again, if there is one thing which we could do together after this event is maybe just to join our efforts in actually finding some other good arguments to convince EDC to change its mind about Ukraine. Look, the economic situation in Ukraine in 2014 and today in 2021 is so different. It's two different universes in terms of the monetary policy, in terms of the banking system. So I think it is not fair and it does not reflect the reality to treat Ukraine the way it was treated in 2014 during the most dangerous part of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So that's something which I would strongly encourage us to do together, and I think we will be able to convince our counterparts in Ottawa on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you, Petro, for those replies. So maybe a little bit, Elena, and maybe you'll have a good good idea about this because, of your relationships with Ian and working in both countries. And I know a lot of the people who are on, attending this webinar this evening and people who might watch the recording afterwards is you think about how can you get involved in encouraging investment in Ukraine, and how can you encourage, not everyone here is, an entrepreneur or owns their own business, but they might be part of a bigger company and they're wondering, how can they get how can they get their company or their employer engaged and interested in Ukraine? So Elena, maybe if you have some thoughts on that, and I have some ideas as well, but maybe I'll let you go first and share your thoughts.
No, first, I think we live in the really perfect time when business can make much easier than ever 10, 15, 20 years ago when we have modern technology. We all connected right now. We use Zoom, we use Skype, we use different other platforms for webinars. So I think right now the meaning of the borders is disappear in the sense what we had before to do business. That's why I think Ukrainian market is open. It's a lot of really smart people, a lot of employees what Ukraine offer, and you can find collaboration, you can do online, you can contact Ukrainian companies, and I think it's always a lot of opportunities. The really good, I think, very positive note that the Ukrainian market is fast developed, and despite all the challenges, troubles, COVID, Russian aggression, still we have a lot of growing companies who want to innovate, the companies who are looking for new contacts abroad. They want to expand open markets. So I think just if you focus on your niche, if you focus in your business specific, you can investigate, you can do online research, you can find companies and contact them with whom you may potentially collaborate. I think it's really opened a lot of opportunities. Like we do business with Ukrainian companies, with Canadian, others. So I think internet helps you a lot to get a lot of information and find out where you can find your niche in the Ukrainian marketplace. And I just want to add, I'm really happy would be to help to give like a gift for your all audience, to people who join us today. And I can offer complimentary audit for branding, for web design, for the companies who want to enter Ukrainian market, that understand weaknesses, traits, and what need to be improved if they really serious want to find business in the Ukrainian market. So this is our complimentary gift. Is for free, so please contact me. I believe that Kasyan can share my contact, and I will be happy to help, because I went this way. I know entrepreneurial way is not easy, but I can help with this with my expertise, what I know. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks, Elena. A very generous offer, and absolutely, it's like we mentioned, it's a very different mindset, different ideas. It's good to know that. I think, before COVID, I traveled to Ukraine several times with different companies, exploring, in particular, in the IT sphere, looking for, for companies to partner with that they could work within Ukraine. And similarly to even currently, we can use Zoom and we can meet online. But I think, after once we're vaccinated or COVID's kind of a thing of the past, which we hope is soon, I think it's still really important to encourage your colleagues, and if you're able to, encourage them to go on a short trade mission or trade trip to Ukraine. It's obviously getting there has cost a little bit of money, but visiting Ukraine is very affordable. And I know that we lined up, over 3 or 4 days, lined up 20 or 30 meetings with different companies, and it was a great opportunity to. It was really quite a shock. I was with 2 Canadians. They had no Ukrainian background. They were Chilean and kind of a more typical Canadian person. So they didn't really know much about Ukraine. I was making the whole sales pitch, but when they got there, they realized, wow, this is such a bright, educated, very literate, great English. Kind of even maybe a little bit embarrassing for the Canadians. So usually English, sometimes English and French, and they're speaking 4 or 5 languages. So it was really a great opportunity for them to be on the ground, to see how their staff works, to see that it's a very similar country in some ways and very different in others. It's very creative. And I think that relationship can be built over Zoom calls and during COVID. And I would encourage, if it's possible, to encourage a short trip to Ukraine, if at all possible. So maybe I'll go into some of these other questions that we have. Fatoy, this would be a question for you about EDC being in Canada. That's our economic or export development. What's the US entity that's similar to EDC?
And this is the question which I will have to answer you by email. I'm not sure, and I don't want to be mistaken, but I'm sure that export support in the US is strong and it's institutionalized. And if you leave your email address, I will send you the reply, or myself, or I will ask my colleagues in Washington to help me.
Excellent. Well, we're just approaching the top of the hour. Don't see too many more questions coming in. So maybe I'll ask yourself, Fatoy, and yourself, Elena, if you have any last words or any last thoughts on CUFTA or working with Canadian, Ukrainian businesses together. Any final thoughts for tonight?
My final thoughts will be to thank you and UCPBA for organizing this event, and I thank all the participants online who invested their time in such a late hour to speak about not such an easy subject. And I wish all of well. I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatoy. Elena?
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you. Great this evening. It was very interesting to discuss these topics, and I can tell you that Ukrainian market has really a lot of opportunities. So don't be don't afraid. Don't think that you cannot do this. You can, if you believe, if you're patient, if you have an objective, like big objective, you can reach this. Ukrainian market is really open for new connections, and I know about this, and I wish good luck, and enter Ukrainian market, develop your business, and I'm sure you always have opportunities and support from the Ukrainian people, and they will be really happy to see you in this market. And thank you so much, everybody, for the invitation. It was really a great evening. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, thank you. Ambassador Shevchenko, do you want to add something?
Thanks to everyone. Glory to Canada. Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. John, I know you mentioned in the chat. I'll connect with you separately. We'll absolutely work with you to establish sister cities and to talk to that further. I think we can connect the ambassador and Fatoy into that discussion as well. So thank you again, everyone, for joining this evening. As we mentioned a few times, this event is being recorded. It'll be posted on the UCPBF Facebook and LinkedIn pages and on our YouTube channel. So it's the Ukrainian Canadian Professional Business Association, or Federation rather, the national organization of all the UCPBA branches across Canada. So thanks everyone again for joining this evening. I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and we'll hopefully see you soon at a webinar. Stay tuned for those on our social media. Thanks everyone, have a great evening.